Hey, go up with my dad.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What a joy to be back in Morganton, North Carolina. Thank you. You can be seated. I'm glad many of you are visiting here for the first time. We want you to know you are our honored guest here at Thrive Today. If this is your first time here or the first time in a long time, I want you to lift your hand up and just say, preacher, this is the first time we've been here. Over here, some in this section, and over here, and every section. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's give them a hand, because we're glad you come. A lot of places you could have been today, but you come to encourage us, and I want to thank you so much. I love my son. I appreciate Pastor Paul Kidd. Be good to my son. Take good care of him. Love on him. Don't let nobody fool with him. Take good care of the man of God, and God will take good care of you. Did you know the Bible said in Genesis chapter 29 and verse number 1, and Jacob went on his journey. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the life of Jacob. He was a liar. He was a crook. Every time his lips were moving, he was trying to hurt somebody. He never told the truth. He stole everything he owned. And he would make a very good politician. Jacob just knew how to finagle people. He knew how to make people twist into his direction. But the Bible said that Jacob had to make a journey. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today on life is a journey. We all have a journey that we must take. As a matter of fact, sitting here today is part of your journey. When it comes to the journey of life, you must always remember that none of them are synoptic or the same. For instance, some of you will live to be old, but some of you will not. Some of you may have to bury one of your precious children that may be in Kids Zone even as I'm preaching this morning. Some of you on your journey of life, it's going to be cool. Everything's going to kind of fit together and you're going to have a low-key life where everything works out. But some of you are going to live in a life of difficulty. It's going to be difficult for you emotionally. You're going to have difficulties financially. You're going to have difficulties in your body. You're going to have problems with your family. So not all of us get on this easy, smooth road when we're going down life's journey. But we all have one thing in common. Our life started at conception, and sad to say, they'll conclude with this thing called death. While you're on this journey of life, several things God gives you an opportunity to enjoy, such as ambitions, dreams, and goals. But you understand, if God is not the center of any of that, then it's all temporary and it really won't amount to anything when you die. So I want to talk to you about the most important thing you possess today, and that's the journey of your life. Life is precious. You better take care of it, you better enjoy it, because you only have one of them. And it seems like the older I get, the more I appreciate life. I remember when I first got saved, people would stand up and say, preacher, pray for me, my back hurts. And somebody would stand up and say, pray for me, I got arthritis. And another would stand up and say, pray for me, I'm having lung trouble. And I'm thinking, man, sit down and shut up. I mean, dear God, this ain't a nursing home, it's a church service. But I'm 55 now, and I love those people, and I pray for them. And you know what's amazing is every time they stand up and say what's wrong with them, I hit my wife and say, I've got that. God, I've had that for years. They're just now getting that. So the older you get, the more you understand how fragile life is. And there's something about life you need to always remember. Life is short, death is sure, and eternity is long. Almost 30 years ago, I committed the unpardonable sin in an independent Baptist movement. I decided to go to a secular university to get an education. Back then, that was almost blasphemy. But I wanted to study a subject that most Christian universities did not offer at the time, which was called psychology. People had told me for many years I was crazy, so I wanted to take the classes to see if I was. I failed the test, don't laugh, you would have too. So I began to study this thing called psychology, the human brain. It weighs about 3 pounds, it's about the size of 2 of your fists. It's 65% water, yet there's over 100,000 miles of veins, vessels, and arteries in your brain. And the older I get, the more I think about the brain and how it correlates with the heart, as my son was talking in this subject a few minutes ago. And I'm thinking about our life and how we think about it and how we take it. And after 27 years of counseling 49,000 cases and gladly retired 2 years ago, I've learned one thing. There's only 3 basic elements that people really want to be sure of when they're on their journey of life. I want to give you those 3 things that I want to make sure you have before you leave this auditorium today, because I may never see you again, God forbid, but it may be your last day on earth. And if it be so, I want you to be sure you have these 3 commodities settled in your heart. There's only 3 things man really wants in life. I'm going to give them to you. Number 1, everybody wants to be loved by somebody. From the moment you were born, you came out of your mother's womb screaming, pitching a fit. You know why? You wanted her undivided attention. You wanted her to hug you. You wanted her to love on you. It's a natural instinct that's instated in everybody. We just want to be loved. And if you don't think your kid is that way, they'll scream and cry and pitch a fit, and as soon as you pick them up, they begin to laugh. Nothing wrong with that, brat. They just want your undivided attention. Because everybody wants to be loved by somebody. And if people do not understand that they're loved, then they begin to use their life, abuse their life, and sometimes even take it for granted to the fact they don't even want to live anymore, and they take their life. So I want to talk about being loved for just a minute, man. Love is an awesome thing. We have what we call a conditional love. In other words, we only love people till we start seeing things about them we don't like. Then when you start seeing things you don't like, it kind of weans off your affection. For instance, you remember the first time you ever thought you were in love with a girl? Oh, no, I remember. I was 4. And I thought I was madly in love. You fellas will know what I'm talking about in a minute. And you think to yourself, you go to bed at night thinking, man, if I could just have a date, if I could see this girl, if she would just give me one opportunity, she would realize I'm the whole package, I'm everything she wants, and much, much more. So finally, through circumstances, you get a date with her. And you take her out, and you're sitting across the table, and you realize, this girl ain't as cute as I thought she was. One of her eyes is not level with the other. Why is her ears shriveled up? Her teeth, there's so much gap between her teeth, she could lose a clothesline for dental floss. And she's so cross-eyed, if she cried, tears would run down her back. And all of a sudden, this girl you couldn't wait to be with, you can't wait to get her home. And as you drop her off, she'll say, now, when are you going to be calling me? Just pray about it, honey. Don't call me, I'll call you. Why have you weaned your affection? Because you have seen their imperfections. But you know what's wonderful about God's love to all humanity? He knows every imperfection you got. He knows how sorry you are. He knows every mistake you've ever made. He knows every scar you carry. He knows every burden that you have to deal with. He knows everything you have ever done that's transgressed the law of God. But in spite of that, God still loves you. Hallelujah. There will never be a day in your life when you will ever be able to say that nobody loves me, because God loves you today. And everybody wants to know that. I remember when I was filling in at a little church in Mississippi, my son was working with me there as the youth director. We had a little boy that came in. He was about 10 years old, and he sat on the back row with one of the boys of our church. And he'd never been to church before, and you could tell that immediately. And so I was preaching, and it was just one of them services where you throw offering plates and cuss people out and tell them not to come back. It's just one of them days. And that little boy's eyes back there seemed like he had seen a ghost in the auditorium. And he came running up to me after the service, and he shook my hand, and he said, man, you are crazy. You're crazy. But I loved it. I can't wait to go home and tell my mother I met a preacher that throws stuff and yells at people and tells them not to come back. I said, look, son, don't do that. Just take mom, we want her to come. So we got a visitor's card, as my son did on you today. And I sent him a letter in the mail and said, look, I want you to come back. I want you to be in our service. He hugged me, said, I love you. I've never been anything like this. Handsome. Biggest blue eyes I'd ever seen on a little boy. And so I sent him a letter, and I called him that week, and I said, look, I want you to be sure to come back. And when Saturday came, I called him again, and his mother answered the phone, and she said, are you the preacher that throws stuff? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm the one that throws stuff. She said, look, my son has been throwing plastic plates all week, and saying the preacher does it, I can too. And I said, now, lady, that ain't the way it goes. But she said, no, I'm excited. Said, he talks about you all the time. Said, I got to come with him. Said, if you're that crazy, I want to come. But she said, we're in the middle of moving and we can't come. Are you listening? You just want to be loved. So I remember loading up in my car and going to the house where they lived, and him and her and that little boy was loading stuff up in the back of her pickup in boxes. And I went up to her and I said, honey, can I help you? And she said, preacher, I didn't want to tell you this, but I'm in the middle of a nasty divorce and my husband has thrown me out. He said, I found a little one-bedroom trailer at the end of the dirt road. That's all I can afford. And I didn't want to tell you, but that's why we wasn't at church. We're moving. And so I went down and followed them. And it was just a dilapidated shack they were moving in. And she put him a little cot in the bedroom, and it had a little porch in the back. She said, this is where we're living, but we want to come back to church. And I hugged that little fella, and he hugged me, and he said, you're the bestest preacher in the world. I want to come back and hear you. The next Sunday went by and they didn't come, and I thought, well, maybe they're moving again. But I called them anyway, and I said, look, I missed you. And she said, preacher, it's the nastiest divorce. It's turned so nasty and dirty. I'm a nervous wreck. My boy's crying himself to sleep. She said, it's pitiful, but I know we need to come. We're going to come. The next Sunday, I'll never forget it as long as I live. They didn't show again. As soon as the service was over, I remember pulling out and picking up my cell phone and calling that little fella. And when his mother picked up the phone, I knew something was wrong. And she said, oh, God, preacher, I've been waiting till church was over to call you. I said, look, I don't know what's going on, but I missed you at church, and I'm sorry, and I don't want to get personal. She said, no, I got to tell you what's going on, preacher. You're not going to believe it. She said, I got my son a puppy to kind of offset this nasty thing that I'm going through with his daddy. And she said, so I bought him a little puppy, and last night I was sitting at the table, and it started to get dark, and I said, I'm going to do the dishes. I want you to go feed your dog. And she said, when I got done with the dishes, I noticed he hadn't come back in. So I ran out on the deck, and I turned the light on to find my son. The brother kid, he hung himself. I found my son hanging on the back door. She said, I've got such a basket case, I don't even know what I'm doing. She said, I dialed 911, and they came out, and there he was hanging. And they said, has he left a note? She said, I don't know. I couldn't even go in the house. And they went back there in the little cot that was laying beside his mother's bed. There was a note on the door, on the floor, and it said, Dear Mom, you and Dad are so busy fighting, I really don't know what to say or do. It seems like you're so busy with your life and he's so busy with his that nobody cares anything about mine. So I decided that since I'm unloved by either, that maybe it'd be best if I wasn't here at all. Goodbye. Second. Let me tell you something, Brother Darrell. I've tossed in my bed 100 nights since that phone call. And I've wondered to myself, Pastor Paul, did I really love on that boy like I should have? Did I call him as much as I should have? Could I went by one more time and maybe picked him up myself? And there's a lot of little 10-year-old boys and girls and moms and dads and teenagers and grandparents that they don't even want to live anymore, and they go to bed and the only thing they want is somebody to love them. We had a bum die in Mississippi the other day. He's a derelict. The city picked him up, put him in a cardboard box, threw him in an open field. He ate out of the garbage cans in our town, and he slept out in the grass back behind some of the small malls there. He died the other day, and he left a note behind to his 4 children. And this is what it said. I have lived a worthless life, for I have lived it unloved. Rejected by my own family, I never felt worthy of any worldly gain or pleasure. Things I didn't even ask for seemed to come to me by just being in life itself. But the one thing my soul was longing for was just for somebody to love me for who I was. A street bum. I will die miserable, not because I eat from a garbage can or not because I sleep on the ground, but rather because I'm void every hour of every day of the feeling of living unloved. So I leave earthly treasures to my 4 careless children that cannot look beyond my rags and love the only man in the world that they could have called Dad. Soon you will see everything in this world and everything you long for will come and go except the one thing you don't have. And that's love. Signed, Dad. And inside was a bank account worth $4 million. When we get to where we love people because of what they wear, or because of what they've done, or because of who they are, or because of the color of their skin, or because of their last name, that's not the love of God. Because God always loves you, and He always loves me. People want to know they're loved. Second of all, people want to know they're forgiven. Have you ever screwed up your life? Well, you're listening to one screwed up preacher today. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I should have been in hell a long time ago. And I appreciate the song Brother Dan was singing today about the ghost of our past. My son knows if I would let my yesterdays reoccur in my life, I don't know if I could emotionally take it. Because we live in a world where people are slow to forgive and quick to criticize. We live in a world where people focus on your mistakes and totally forget your accomplishments. We live in a world that focuses on negative and rejects positive. And so sometimes when you take people like you and I that maybe were a little bit older when we got saved, we bring what I call baggage with us. We got problems. And I tell everybody everywhere I go, I ride a Harley Davidson. I got tattoos. I'm a mixed martial arts fighter. There's nothing spiritual about it, but I love smacking you in the mouth. I can't help it. It's where I came from. God saved me out of the ghetto. I'm a nobody telling everybody about a somebody that can save anybody. And I never got over the fact that Jesus loved me enough to forgive me. Do you know for a fact in your life that you've been forgiven? Now, your family may never forgive you. I know the court system will never forgive me. And the psychiatrists, they'll remember me long after they're dead and gone. They'll still think about me. But in heaven, it has been recorded that all of my iniquities have been washed away in the blood of Jesus Christ. I've got good news for everybody here today. It doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter how low you are. It doesn't matter how much your life is messed up. Jesus specializes in straightening out messed up lives. And you're proof of it, and I am too. So let's give the Lord a hand. Let him know how much we appreciate him. Loving sinners! It's such an honor to have my wife here today, and my daughter, and my son-in-law. And it's awesome to preach in my son's church. This is cool. I can't see you, but it's cool. Now, my wife, she's awesome. She's beautiful. She looks like my daughter. And everywhere I go, people tick me off. They'll say, "Oh, is this your daughter?" It makes me mad as a devil. But I tell you, I got an answer for them now. You know what I done? I'm a plastic surgeon. That's my mother. And everybody wants my card. Everybody wants my card. You see that dimple on her chin? She's had so many facelifts. That's her belly button. Where we just keep pulling and stretching. My wife is an unusual woman. She's from up north. Good people, they're just weird. Awesome people. And you can have blood transfusion, you can send them to a Benny Hinn meeting, I've done all that, they're still northerners. But my wife is a sucker for this as seen on TV stuff. Have you ever seen that advertisement, as seen on TV? Now look, do you know what that means? When they stack this stuff up and says, here's what that means, sir. That means people watching TV wasn't stupid enough to buy that stuff. So they stack it up in a warehouse and look for people to buy that stuff. So my wife comes home the other day, and I could tell by the bag it was one of this junk, this Pakistani junk. And she said, honey, I want you to open this up and hook it up for me. I said, honey, and I saw the label I seen on TV. So you know what I do? I'm telling you, lady, I just open up trash can, I just throw it all away, because it's no use fooling with it. It's junk. That's why they send it here. They don't buy it over there either. And I said, just, honey, throw this thing away. She said, oh, please, honey, I've heard about these things, you gotta try. And I opened it up, Brother Dale, and it's a little piece of plastic, just a plastic ball. And you know what it says? Pocket hose. I said, okay. Now, let me ask you a question, honey. Who carries a water hose around in their pocket? Are you crazy? And she said, no, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. She said, and it's just a little green wrinkle thing in this little plastic ball. And she said, honey, there's 50 foot of water hose in there. I said, look, honey, I smoked a lot of dope before I got to COVID. I had never been dumb enough to think there's 50 foot of water hose in that stupid thing. I said, I'm not opening it. You're not making a fool out of me. How many of you have ever seen a pocket hose? Sure, how many of you got one? Oh, dear Lord. I thought I got quiet. But you look at that pocket hose, it's green, it's wrinkled, it's got knots, it's all crooked. Looks just like a mother-in-law, just all green and shriveled up. You've seen it before. And so I opened this hose up, and I said, all right, honey, if you really think there's 50 foot of hose in this, you're crazy. But just, I love you, and I don't start a fight over a hose, I'm going to hook it up. And so I opened up this plastic container, and all this green wrinkled stuff's in there, and there's instructions on the top, and this is what it says. Do not try to straighten this mess out by yourself. There's too many knots, there's too many kinks, there's too many wrinkles. You cannot straighten this mess out. But if you hook it up to the fountain, what you can't do, the fountain will. And I said, I don't believe it. I don't believe anything. And I threw that nasty wrinkled, crinkled thing down, and I hooked it up to the water fountain, and I turned that water on, and brother, in 2 seconds, boom! That thing straightened out. 50 foot water hose. Somebody said, what'd you do? I went and bought 2 more just to play with them. I don't need them, but I play with them. And here's what I found out. You may think your life is so messed up you can't straighten it out. Maybe you got some knots and some wrinkles, and maybe you got some kinks, and you say, but you don't know what I've been. I've been to jail, I've been to prison, I've been on drugs, I've been a drunk, I've been divorced, I've shacked up, my life's messed up, I have no standards, I'm the black sheep of the family, nobody wants nothing to do with me. Let me tell you something, your life is so messed up you can't straighten it out. But if you get hooked up to the water of life, if you let Jesus have it all, I don't care where you've been, how messed up you are, there's a God in heaven that can straighten you out. Can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be loved, man. Everybody wants to be forgiven. And if you're not, you can be today. Number 3, and I'm closing. Everybody wants peace. Is it really asking too much? You just want peace?
Come on.
In your heart, in your life, and the conclusion of your journey? Is that really asking for a lot, just wanting peace? Being a psychologist, I want you to know this. In the last 2 years, America has sold more antidepressants in the last 2 years than they did the 10 years before that combined. I'm not against that. There are some people that need medication to be normal. I have a message on my table that deals with that very thing. It doesn't mean you're unspiritual. It doesn't mean you don't love God.
That's right.
You can have a brain issue just like a heart issue, a lung issue, and a kidney issue. Nothing wrong with that. But some of these people are medicated because of a lack of peace.
That's right.
They're just not satisfied inside. It's like there's a missing part of the puzzle that you can't find. And it doesn't matter what you do or don't have. It doesn't change the fact that something's missing. You know, Pastor Paul, Robin Williams died the other day. And you know, when I did my thesis to become a doctor, I did my thesis on suicide. So it's been a very close subject to me for a long period of time. Now, for you and I to look at Robin Williams, you're looking at a multi-millionaire. You're looking at a man that lives in only the most prestige neighborhoods wherever his homes were scattered all over the country. He was one of the most renowned comedians and funny people alive. Just the way he looked would make you laugh. It was a natural thing. He didn't have to put on a show. It was him. And you look at him, and the clothes he wore, and the red carpets that he walked, and the money that he had, and the houses, and the limousines, and the Lamborghinis, and all of the stuff that goes with it. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But what people didn't know was every time he made you laugh, he was crying.
Right.
Crying because of a lack of peace. And then finally, God forbid, just the other day, he walked into his bedroom, his wife in the other room, tried slitting both of his wrists with a cheap pocket knife, and hung himself. How can a guy that has it all leave like he has nothing? I was thinking about Elvis Presley coming here. I've been to the Graceland Mansion there, and maybe some of you have 13 limousines and 5 full-time accountants just to keep up with his money. He has sold $1 billion worth of product since he's died. He sold $1 billion worth of products. And in the height of all his fame and glory and prestige, he dies sitting on a toilet by himself in Memphis.
Yeah.
Janis Joplin at the top of her singing career, overdose, Find Her Purple. And I can go on and on and on, and I'm not being critical of the celebrity status. I'm simply thinking, trying to get you to think that you say, well, if I just had a car, if I just had a nice house, if we just had better clothes, if we had more money in the bank account, let me tell you, you can have all of that and still not have peace.
Amen.
I'd rather be a beggar on the side of the road and have peace in my heart than to be a millionaire and not know Jesus as my personal Savior. So I want to talk to you closing just a minute about peace. And having peace is also because it's not geared by your circumstances. It doesn't matter what's happening around you, it's something the world can't take. And if there's one time I want you to have peace, all of us, it's when you leave this world. You're going to die. And when I die, I have, as an embalmer, I've watched them die screaming. I've watched them die begging. I started embalming in 1974. But in the late 90s, I saw a woman die that I wish to God I'd never seen. It's never left me. For 3 days, my wife will tell you, I sat up on the side of my bed and wept all through the night. I watched them die without God. I've watched them die with no peace. Diamond rings, Mercedes out in the yard, $1 million homes paid for, screaming and grabbing my arms, begging me not to let them die. I want you to have peace when you die. I want to close with this. When I was in Bible college, you had to sing in the choir. Now, if you ever heard me sing, you'd understand I don't even be in no choir. Especially the way these guys jump around. I could never do that stuff. But I could never sing in a choir. My son has all that ability to sing. My wife's worse than I am. And she has seen on TV. I mean, it's bad. But when I was in college, I had to sing up in the choir, and we had to set up here and look at the congregation. And there was a woman that would come in the left, her and her husband, he was an evangelist, and Greenway was their name. And when service would get on, and people get to shouting and to crying, that precious lady, she was probably in her mid to late 50s, she'd raise her hand, and I'd tell you the glory would fall. She was just one of the kind of Christians you could see God on her. You ever been around one of them? It's just a glow, just peaceful, just an encouragement to be around them. She just had God on her. One day she came in with a pillow around her stomach. Her husband said, they just found out my wife, she had cancer. And she's going to die. There's nothing they can do. Liver, pancreas. But she would come in and all skinny and hurting, and he'd say she's been up all night. And she'd sit on that front pew, and man, when it would get on, she'd raise that bony hand, tears running down. Just peace. Man, that girl had peace.
Yeah.
And I can't sing, but I do know how to shout. Now, bless God, I know how to shout. And there was a microphone that always hung down from the roof over the choir. And when I'd see her shout, you don't know how many times I wanted to grab that thing and like Tarzan, just go out across that auditorium going, whoa! If that crowd would have had a massive heart attack, but I would enjoy it. When Miss Greenway died, the nurse came in and was standing at the foot of her bed writing on a chart. Brother Greenway was sitting by her, and she took him by the hand and said, now, honey, I'm going to heaven in just a minute. I get to leave. And I want to be with Jesus. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. And she said, now, I'm dying. And she said, I want you to preach my funeral. You'll do fine. And she said, I want you to bury me in my wedding dress. And he started weeping, and he said, honey, I don't know if I can do this. She said, God will help you. I'll be with the Lord. I'll pray for you. God will get you through this. She said, but I want you to bury me in my wedding dress. He said, why? She said, because the next time you join hands with me, we're going to be married to Jesus. And I want to meet the Lord in my wedding gown.
Yeah.
And when she said that, that nurse flung that pad up against the wall. And Brother Greenway looked at her and said, ma'am, is there something wrong with you? She said, yes, there is, sir. I've been taking care of this lady for 3 days. And every time I come in here, she's talking about going to heaven, being around the throne of God. I heard her tell you she's going to see Jesus in just a couple of minutes and bury her in her wedding gown, because the next time y'all hold hands, you're going to a wedding to marry Jesus. She said, I'll tell you something, sir. I don't know what your wife's got, but I'm not leaving this hospital room till I get what that lady dying there has got. You know what it's called? The peace of God that passes all understanding. So here's what I want to ask you. Number one, do you really know you're loved? Number two, do you really know you've been forgiven? Are you sure you have been washed in the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ by faith in his death, burial, and resurrection? And number three, sir, this is the ultimate, because this is really all that counts. If you died today, would you die with peace? I am redeemed. He set me free. Listen now. So I'll shake off these heavy chains, wipe away every stain, 'cause I'm not